Welcome to the Women in Business radio show with Sian Murphy, connecting women in business around the globe.
Hello and welcome into the Women in Business radio show studio. I almost forgot where I was
You
then.
did. I was like, no,
we're in the radio studio. I'm Sian Murphy, my co-host is
Adelle Martin.
And who have we got in the studio with us today? So I can't see. My microphone is... has somebody changed this? It's so big I can't actually see over the top of it. In the studio today we have Melissa Lewis, who is the founder and CEO of ML Property Venture. We are going to be talking with her later in this show about investing in property to grow your wealth. Also in the studio, who's going to be joining in with the conversation, is Mbeke. Mbeke Wazame, who is a photographer, a coach, a funding expert, an author, a poet, and a very, very busy lady. She's also an expert in working and living abroad. So she will be joining in with the conversation. But first of all, I think we've got some announcements, haven't we, Adelle?
We have. Do you want me to go
I have
first?
to give you these announcements because I've been holding my breath all the time I'm saying that. I can't actually breathe. Could you do the announcements?
I will do the first one. So we have the big show on the 10th of August at the Longfield Academy. So you can get here across Kent and across from London. And we've got a slightly different format this year. And we were just literally, as we go on, we always have a chat before air, that we're going to have...
Yeah, we just reorganised the entire event.
We do, with like a minute to go. We've now got the Fab Over 50 section, which we did have that show before COVID, in it lockdown and things have changed.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some new sections, new sponsors. So I'm really looking forward to the new format, actually, this
It is,
year.
and we've got some really good... we've got some really good sponsors on board this time. We're going to be doing sort of proper announcements when I've got my act together, basically.
We're at January now, it's February.
Yeah, Adelle is also one of our sponsors,
Yeah.
and Adele's going to be focusing on the Fab Over 50 section.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll just be wafting in and out. I don't really do much actually on the day. I just walk up and down a lot looking tense.
with teas and coffees. No, it's good. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good show. There's a lot of good vibe. I think, this, coming out of lockdown and moving forward, there's so many women I'm talking to are really looking forward to it in the summer. So, yeah, it's going to be a good show.
Haven't I got some announcements? Oh, yes. Okay. So I can't read my own writing. It has occurred to me that we have Zoom. We have international networking opportunities. We have a lot of listeners in the States. Why don't we do some international networking? And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. I think it was coming out of COVID and having done some of the radio shows sort of on Zoom and recording them in that way rather than having people in the studio. Do you know, I was totally zoomed out, thoroughly sick to death of it, actually. It's not a way that I enjoyed broadcasting. And I think that sort of clouded my views a little bit. And it suddenly dawned on me the other day. We have people who are now subscribing. They're subscribing to our newsletter. But, it's not that it's not that interesting. It's just that it's the show and there are other ways of getting hold of that. And I thought, we really need to sort of build some value into this. And what else can we do that's going to enhance the community, this fabulous community of women working across the globe, internationally? Why don't we have networking? So now for everybody who's subscribing to our newsletter, we're going to be having monthly networking. That's going to take place, she says, confidently launching it now on March, going to be starting March the 8th. So it's on Wednesday evenings starting at 6 o'clock. So between 6 and sort of 7 o'clock. And that means that the people in the States are able to join in without having to get up in the middle of the night. So hopefully that's going to be a good time with them. I need to check with some of our potential co-hosts and presenters from over there. And that's what we're going to be doing. And you can subscribe by finding us on Substack. So if you head over onto Substack and search for the Women in Business Radio Show, you can find us there. And you can subscribe. You can subscribe for free. But there is a £7 a month subscription, or there is a £70 for the year subscription. And it's one of those two that you need to have to be able to join in with the networking. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm actually quite excited. I'm also sort of like, I'm doing that thing where you slap yourself on the forehead, going, why haven't I? This is so basic. It's so simple. Why haven't we come up with this before? But, sometimes you need to be in the right space, don't you?
Yeah, it'd be good to actually, I think there's an element of Zoom fatigue because we all had that.
Yeah.
And now it's that time of using it properly within our business. And we have got so many people that listen to us overseas. It's been good to actually see them.
I just don't know why I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm sure there's going to be a lesson in there that's going to emerge over the next few weeks as to why this stunningly obvious thing hasn't occurred to me in all of this time. But hey-ho, we live and learn. Perhaps I wasn't ready.
No. Now we are.
Perhaps the time wasn't right.
This is exactly it. The time is right now. Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah. It's just that, sometimes you have all of these complicated things and loads of equations and machinations, and you can see why you haven't come up with something before, because it's just a little bit complex. But this now is a no-brainer thing. I think everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. Why not me? Why aren't we doing it on the radio show?
Yeah.
Anyway, now we are. So that's that. So we've just about done all of that, haven't we?
We have.
So let's move on to our quickfire round of useful things. So who's going to start off? What have you? I need to find a better intro into this, because we sort of stopped doing the announcements, and my little brain's going, "What are we going to talk? What's next? What's next? Oh, it's that. Okay, what is that?"
As usual.
We need to call it something. So
quick
shall we?
fire round.
Quick fire round of useful things. Actually, we'll go with that. That's just my own notes. Let's go with that. So Adelle, hopefully you've been reading or listening to something this week that you can tell us about.
Yes, I have actually. So I've been listening to a podcast called Grow or Die, and this one grabbed my attention because it was about brand identity and personal identity and marketing, and it just made things very simple and very easy. And at the moment I've got lots going on, so I'm a bit of a podcast rather than book mode at the moment.
I'm actually quite into podcasts as well. I found a brilliant one the other day, but I can't for the life of me remember what it was. I'll sort it out for next week's show. Melissa, are you reading anything at the moment?
Yes, I am. So currently I'm reading a few things, I think, because I've got Audible as well. I kind of
Yes.
With Audible, you kind of start one thing, move on to the next thing. But I'm currently listening/reading. Forgotten the title, but it's on manifestation. I think it's like the Manifestation Handbook or the Manifestation Manual. Mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
Okay. We'll hunt that out. We should be able to find it from that, shouldn't we?
Oh, yeah.
We generally can. The manifestation. We'll look it up in a minute, and we'll make sure we get the right information out. I'm listening to something at the moment by a guy called Dawson Church, and it's called Bliss Brain, and it's about meditation. His take on meditation. He's also an EFT practitioner, and it's really, really good. And there's a sort of full meditation program behind it. And one of the things that I've learned from it is actually you sort of need to do this stuff. It's no good reading about it. I'm great at that. I read it. I think, oh yeah, I must do that, and I'll do it a couple of times, and then I'll just give up. But one of the things that I particularly like about this book is that he talks about actually failing in meditation, and how the fact that you keep getting these thoughts coming back, and the exercise that you go through to then refocus is actually far more useful than sitting there, sort of in this wonderful meditative state all the time. And so talking about it not working and you putting it right is actually a better thing. And I thought that was really, really encouraging. I like that because I think a lot of people beat themselves up because they see themselves as failing at meditation. So that's Bliss Brain by Dawson Church. So, Adelle, what have you learnt this week?
It's okay not to be okay, is what I've learnt this week. And that sometimes, as much as you think you've got everything together, you just don't. And it's okay not to be okay. I've had a challenging few weeks, and I just sat back and said, you know what? I can't do everything that's on my plate, even though I'm expected to, and I'm not going to. And it's okay not to be okay. And then the people that have reached out to me that said to me, are you okay? And I've gone, no. I found that quite interesting. And you, Sian, asked me on Saturday if I'm okay, and I said, no, I'm not. So for me, that's what I've learnt this week. It is okay not to be okay. And the people that lean in and help you, say, oh, that's fine then, and walk off. It's quite interesting. So I've had more people lean in and look after me as opposed to, there's a few gone, but you'll be okay because you always are, and walked off, which I thought was quite funny.
But sometimes, and it's just a particular thing. I would like to be able to say, actually, no, I'm not, without somebody then trying to fix me and come up with a solution. The fact that I've said something does not mean I want you to, I need you to come up with, sort of a 3.5 hour long diatribe of a solution and your suggestions as to what I do. If, and I think if we want some help, we'll ask for help. But it's nice to be able to go, do you know, actually, no, it's complete pants at the moment. And just acknowledge it rather than having to lie.
Yeah, I like that.
Can I just add to that, because this is a common occurrence in my existence. I know that feeling when I want to speak to people, but I just want them to shut up and listen to what I'm saying. But I also know that kind of feeling of when someone presents me with a problem, I want to solve it. I want to help them. I want to be the hero in the situation. And that's something I'm learning when, friends or family, they call me with a problem, just to listen and kind of acknowledge the situation and then wait to see where they take the conversation next. Because, I'm very guilty of being like, right, don't worry, Melissa to the rescue. I have everything here. These are what you need to do. These are the things. So, yeah. It's a good point.
And I say learnt that lesson, but I was the same. And it wasn't until I sort of experienced it when I had somebody suggesting things to me, and I'm thinking, do you think I'm an idiot? That I haven't actually come up with any of this stuff, and I realised it was actually quite exhausting. Going through, okay, well, thought about that 1.5 years ago. Yep, okay, well, that hasn't, and I became conscious that I was just butting. And I didn't want to be butting. I actually just wanted to say, no, I'm not all right. This is what's happened. And just to have that acknowledged, and then we can move on. I didn't want solutions that I had to then be explaining, because now we're into this great big drama and diatribe. So, yes.
And now what I do is when I pick up the phone to someone, I say, right, have you got a minute? I just want to offload. I don't want a solution. And then I just offload. But then saying that, the conversation, I get to the end and it's like, right, excellent. So, how are you finding the weather? And it's almost awkward, like, where do we go from here? But I feel better because I've said what I needed to say, and that's it. So,
yeah. Sometimes I think it's just nice to let people know that you may not be yourself. You may not be yourself, and there may be a reason for that you may want to disclose, or it may well be that you don't want to disclose. That you just say, actually, things aren't brilliant at the moment. They'll be okay, but this is where I am. So, if I'm not jumping up and down and leaping with glee, that's why.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Melissa.
Yes.
What have you learnt this week?
The importance of boundaries. I am a recovering people pleaser. I want to help everybody. I want to solve everyone's life. Forget what's happening with me. I just want to be there for everyone. And I'm starting to learn like my maximum bandwidth. So what happens is I get to my maximum bandwidth, and then usually that's, in the evening. I've had a full-on day, and it's usually my sister who picks up the phone and she wants to talk about the things that the Melissa at that time of the night doesn't really deem relevant. And usually I would always push my own boundary, and I would say, I'm not really in the mood to chat right now, but go on if it's quick. 45 minutes we could be on the phone. So this week I've made a point of, when I get to like that point where I'm like, I've had enough for this evening. I'm ready to just not speak to anyone. Just kind of recognizing when I'm at the kind of threshold of my bandwidth, and
that's it.
Setting boundaries.
Yeah, you have to look after yourself first.
Yes.
There's a book. So I'm going to recommend a second book now, and I've recommended it on the show before. It's called The Worthy Project. And if I can, I'll have a look in a minute and see who it's by. But I don't recall there being anything that's even similar to that. So The Worthy Project, really, really good book with some really interesting little exercises that for me were a real eye-opener, actually, because I always thought that I had my own self-worth, and that, I knew where that was, and that everything was fine and dandy, and I thought I was wonderful and don't have a problem with my value. Turns out I do. Turns out I do. And it was silly little things that she suggested, which they seem silly, but actually they're really significant. And it was things like, take a picture of your bed as it is now, and take a picture of your dinner as it is now. And what do you think? And it was things like, so you take a picture of your meal and you think, actually, this is rushed and put together. There's there's a chip on that plate, and the cutlery doesn't match, or there isn't a serviette and you wanted one. It doesn't really matter sort of what your standards are. It was just looking at it and actually this does not meet my standards. This is but by taking a picture of it, you're looking at it in the abstract. And taking a picture of your front door and going, what does this front door say about me and who's in here? And how I feel and think about myself. And it was a real eye-opener. And she's got a number of little exercises like that. It's really gets you sort of looking at things from a different angle.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It is. It's a really, really good book. Okay. Oh, yes, I have learnt something this week. I learn something every week. This week I have learnt to focus on the project and not on the to-do. I have this mountainous to-do list. It goes on round the corner and down the road. And it just, I realised that I'm just sort of ticking things off it, or not ticking things off it, actually. But they weren't necessarily the things that needed doing. And I thought, actually, this just isn't working. I'm hopping around all over the place. So I decided to focus on the project that I'm working on. I have a number of different income streams and things happening. And I said, OK, that's it. We're going to time block that project, and then I deal with the to-dos that I had actually within that project. And I found it was just a really good way of focusing and getting stuff done. And I could feel myself sort of calming down. This is after I spent Tuesday opening and closing tabs on the computer the whole day. Opening and closing tabs on the computer until it was 1 o'clock, which arrives quite early on Tuesday, actually. But I do still have work. I've got stuff I need to get done. So that was it. Stop opening and closing tabs and focus on the project. So, have you got a productivity? I can't see it. I'm going to have to do this bigger, and I can't see a thing. Productivity tips. Have you got a productivity tip for this week, Adelle?
Again, do you know what? I echo what you've just said, because most of us as business owners will have a to-do list and have a project list. And where I was doing my to-do list in the morning, I realised actually my creativity writing is much better in the morning. So looking at my own, again, pardon the language, but circadian rhythm, where I am more productive versus not, I've actually this week just tipped my diary on the head, and I'll do all my creative writing, my project work in the morning. And then when, a bit like I'm laughing, my boundaries drop about 4 o'clock and everybody rings me and I'm like, that's first world problems. I really don't care. When I'm in that mood and I've got low energy, I will do my to-do list because they're pretty hygiene factors. And that's what I've done. So for me, it's still doing the same activities, but I'm just using it more around when I'm more productive. Rather than just getting the admin done in the morning. It's not very rewarding. So I've started that, and I've done that now this is now my second week, and it's made a massive difference.
I always find that I'm too knackered by then to do the admin properly, actually. But that's just different. Yeah,
and people are different.
That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Find your own body rhythm. Yeah. Because we are not the same. So I say to people, don't copy me. That's not the point. What I'm saying is listen to your own body. You know when you're more creative. I know when I'm very tolerant, and I know when I'm not. And that's when I go and hide away. So I don't win friends and influence people. I would not. So there are jobs that I do when, So for me, you've got to learn your own body and follow your own body. Don't copy other people.
I like that. Melissa, have you got a tip? Have you got something? It could be a tool. It could be a tool that you use. Could be a piece of software. It could be a technique that you use that helps keep you on track and productive.
So to be fair, it's similar to Adelle. I know that I'm most productive in the morning. So I usually get up at 5 and start my admin at 5, because then by 7, 8 o'clock, I have this inner gloat, like, look at me. I've done all of these things. And I make sure that's the moment I want to call people and tell everyone how much I've achieved.
Look what I've done. Look how many Post-it notes I've got out.
That's literally it. But I have been reading, another thing that I've been reading, Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Oh, yes.
I read it in 2021 previously, but I've discovered recently that there's one for entrepreneurs. So I'm kind of rereading it and going through it. And I think I'm going to have to change my routine a bit just to kind of get some of the Miracle Morning tools. So it's like affirmations and meditation exercise, journaling. These are all things that I do. You know, I have a gratitude jar, and various bits and pieces. I could go on with all the kind of woo-woo things that I do to stay sane. But yeah, in terms of productivity, I do like to just do as much as I can in the morning. But I think, I'm going to change it a bit, do a bit of miracle morning, and then jump into work.
Yeah, if I could be, again, because I do like to be controversial, with that miracle morning, again, because you got the books, I get up at 5, etc., and they said you win the morning. For me, if you do win the morning, you do win the day. What you have to be careful is all of the things in those type of books are telling you to, like, in theory, ticking off a to-do list and quietening the mind. You've got to find what suits you in that, because that's what it's doing. So if you actually... It's, for me, I call it East meets West. If you take the theory of the East and the woo-woo, but take just the way the brain works, which is a bit Western, it's finding what's right for you. Yeah. So for me, I take a bit of that book and a bit of that book, but the most important thing is what win the morning looks like for me. And that's the most important thing I could say.
And for some people, getting up... I get up at 5 in the morning because that's when I wake up. Actually, no, I don't actually get up very often. I'll just sort of lie there for a bit till a cup of tea arrives. But I wake up at 5 in the morning. But for some people, that's an absolute nightmare. That's just not how they work. And so something like, sort of the 5 a.m. kickstart or whatever it's all called is not for them. Other people get up at 11. And that's okay. Who cares?
This is very true.
Yeah, who cares? If it works for you, I think it's brilliant, and you can shift it, can't you? Your morning can start whenever you want it to start. It depends how your day goes. If your day ends because you have to pick children up or you have to do something, and your day ends at 3, then if you want to get stuff done, chances are you are going to have to get up at that time in the morning. But if your day doesn't end, you can start your day whenever you want, can't you?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I used to. I think for me, business goes in seasons. There's a busier season where I'm more tense, and then there's times where things are kind of, it feels smooth sailing. I feel like, wow, this,
and you think,
is
hey,
amazing.
what was the problem?
Exactly.
What's everybody moaning about?
Exactly. And I think this is where these little kind of meditation stuff comes in, because some days you could do none of that. You can literally wake up, do nothing, and not even feel bad about it. But then there's some days where you kind of beat yourself up, and literally, like what you said, Adele, it's about tailoring things not just to you, but according to like the time of day, the season, the month, like what you fancy doing. Don't get me wrong, if I don't want to wake up at 5, definitely wouldn't even bother. But for this week, the way this week has been, it's been needed. But I completely agree with you.
It does, and business goes in seasons, and the year goes in seasons as well. We can't walk away from the fact that we are in winter. It's tougher. We've got January, so you just sometimes I think if we listen too much to other people telling us how we should spend our mornings or our days, and I say take a bit of everything, but you know what? You're the only person who knows what a win looks like. You know what your day looks like, and like me, and just do your own thing. You know if you're winning or losing.
Yeah.
So, productivity tip, I've got one, and that is, yesterday was the 1st of February. I was doing my monthly planning, and it was profit and loss spreadsheet day. Sort of doing a forecast for the next year, and just sort of how useful having that spreadsheet is, and for me, drawing my goals out of the P&L, out of the profit and loss, and looking at it and looking at what's actually bringing money in and what isn't. That doesn't mean it has to go out the door, but it could be, okay, why are we doing this? What is the deeper purpose for doing this? Is there a deeper purpose? And if there isn't, then perhaps it actually needs to go. And really sort of drilling down on the goals, and both business goals and how they are also financial goals. Because it's lovely doing stuff and being wonderful to everybody, but if you don't actually make any money or put any food on the table or have a roof over your head, it's not actually really a business, is it?
No, it's not.
So,
it's not even a charity, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
Yeah, I tell you what, running a charity is not easy. You know, they want the numbers, and they want the feedback, and they want the outputs, and they want the outcomes, and they want absolutely everything. So a profit and loss spreadsheet is actually a comparatively simple tool to use and set up. Just do that. Work on that. Revisit it if you haven't seen it for a while. Because very often I think it's something we do to apply for grants, or it's something we do to apply for loans,
leave the accountant
or something that we do because somebody else wants us to do something. And actually, I think it's a really powerful tool that you can, sort of revisit and make your own. Not for the accountant, not for the bookkeeper, not for the grant application, not for the funder. Actually, just for yourself.
definitely.
Okay, we are now going to be talking about, and it's focusing on you, Melissa, because we're just going to ask, what do you do to relax, switch off, or calm down?
This is a very good question.
Huh.
It depends. So my usual go-to is to watch a horror film.
Oh, okay.
So what I like is, I live alone currently, and with a horror film, I feel like why are you laughing?
Because I've got this picture. Because you said I live alone, so I've now got a picture of you on the sofa with a blanket.
This is it, and this is what makes it a fully immersive experience, because I can wrap myself.
Because
in
you've
my
got
duvet.
nobody bringing you back to reality.
Exactly, because there's always. Anytime you watch a horror film with someone, there's always one that's trying to make you jump before the time. That is,
Or you're sat there, the serial killer's coming in through the door, and somebody goes, "Do you want a cup of tea?"
Yeah. Or I knew it was them. Somebody get a monologue over the top of it.
Exactly.
In my house, you do. You get a running commentary. I'm like, I don't need to watch this.
Exactly. But for me, I can wrap myself in my duvet, get fully involved. I'm scared. I'm like it needs something like a horror film that's gonna kind of hold my attention and make me think, oh my goodness, what's happening?
It takes you out of it, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. I do you know we've not had that, have we?
No,
so thank
like
you.
that.
I think that's really, really good. What is now? I'm having a bit of a funny turn about this, Adelle. I'll tell you.
Oh dear.
What
is it the question? Oh God, it's the question.
I'm having a war at the moment against not owning failure and positive thinking, because I think we need to. It isn't the truth. We need to own the truth, and we need to accept it and move on. So, what is your biggest failure, Melissa?
Gosh, how long have we got?
Do you want me?
My biggest failure.
Do you want me to tell you what you put? Because we do have a little questionnaire. Would you like me to tell you what you
please.
put? Hang on a minute. Hang on.
Yeah, because my mind is completely blank.
It was a really interesting one, actually.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting one. It was not working on my mind, not working on your mindset from the start, and depending on, and this is what I liked about it, external validation instead of looking within. Reached burnout in the early days and couldn't see a way to avoid it, as silly as that sounds. It doesn't sound silly to me at all. Whereas now you're a work in progress. We're all a work in progress, aren't we? And now you think about yourself and take more breaks or turn opportunities down if they'll have a negative impact.
Oh my goodness.
And I just love that. Because I think you're right. We start off in business and we don't think about our mindset, and we do look external for external validation outside of ourselves, for somebody to say, "Hey, you're doing a really good job." The trouble is, very often in business, nobody tells you that.
Literally, when you start a business, no one tells you how difficult it's going to be, and no one tells you about the mental journey that you have to go on alongside starting your business, growing your business, and all of these things. And I had no idea about mindset in the early days, and I remember I would call friends like crying, like, "Oh, it's been terrible today," or, I've not made a penny today, and these things. And it was always, I felt like I was always depending on, I guess, like I've said, like somebody else to say, "Oh, Melissa, you're doing really well. It's absolutely fine." I think the turning point was realising, or through all the reading and videos and, motivational stuff that I've had to kind of do, there was like a turning point where I learned that everything is on me. Like I can make a difference, but my mindset needs to be on board with this. I can't just think every disaster is a massive catastrophe and this is it. I'm packing it in and I'm going to run away to the circus. Like, I've actually got to stop that level of thinking, and kind of similar to what I said earlier, this is why I do all of these woo-woo things. I say woo-woo, it's not woo-woo at all. I only say it because when I sometimes speak to friends and, not everyone understands
Listen, I run psychic circles and psychic intuitive circles and psychic health and beauty fairs. So there is nothing, this to me isn't woo-woo. I used to be quite embarrassed by this. So I used to pretend I didn't do that. So I'm working with business women over here and corporates and that sort of thing. And over here I've got like this serious, and I used to try and keep them apart, because I thought, if these guys over here, the corporates I'm working with, find out that I'm running these fairs, they'll stop working with me, or I'll go down in their estimation. And then I realised that actually I had to stop worrying about what other people thought.
Exactly that.
And that if they didn't like it, they could F off.
Yeah,
And
I co-sign
fine,
that.
they're not my people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
So it's all been, and me reaching burnout, that was because I was just taking on everything. I was saying yes to everything because I was thinking, oh my goodness, finally the phone is ringing. Finally, the account is starting to have more than 0.00. Like this is progress. And I was taking on, so like property services. So it's like viewings, it's inventories, these kinds of things. And it's all, go over there and you get paid maybe 50 quid to do a service over there. And it was literally that. And I would be driving all across London and Essex, and just one day I just thought, I'm not going to get out of bed, and I don't think I can for a couple of weeks. So, and that was the turning point where I thought, okay, maybe I need to work on how I'm thinking, because as much as people down the phone are saying, oh, Melissa, don't worry about it, it's not hitting home how it should for me to continue on this journey.
Yeah, no, I get that. So, what's your superpower?
I love these questions. Oh my goodness. I would say communication. But I think it also comes down to people pleasing. And I think all of my superpower is I feel like I'm a good communicator. I feel that I can speak to anyone and be able to kind of find common ground. But also what I notice on the kind of other end of that is further to what I said about kind of people pleasing and boundaries. I try to anticipate other people's needs so I can best help them. So on one hand, it's a superpower. I can, you've got a problem and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to bring myself to the level that you're on and try and fully understand and feel your emotions. But then on the other side, I'm still trying to learn how to use.
So you have to put that boundary in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your superpower becomes your
Achilles heel.
Your Achilles heel. But that's very often the way with all of them, isn't it?
Mine is.
Yeah.
Mine's my strength and my weakness. Yeah, my superpower.
Super. Let's delve a little bit deeper into what you actually do and who you do it with. So tell us a little bit about your business and who you work with.
Yes. So I deal with sourcing properties and developments for investors. I also do property services, so like viewings, inventories, inspections.
So that would be for somebody who's got a property that they want to rent out.
Yes.
So they've made that investment. Now they want to rent it out, and they just need a sensible, practical, less troublesome way of doing it than going along and doing it themselves, because it's not that easy, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of following the journey. So I'm there in the beginning, if someone wants to invest in property, and kind of I will find that property and run the numbers and give them everything. So, I found this property, these are the numbers, this is what you can expect to spend on, your mortgage or, rough mortgage rates, bits and pieces. And then when that property's bought, it's been refurbed, I can take on management. And
you came to this business through your own experience, didn't you?
Yes. So I bought my property, which I'm still in now, when I was 26. So I remember at the time I was working full-time in HR, and I secretly hated working. I would get that feeling on a Monday when everyone was saying, oh gosh, it's Monday. Everyone would say it and then happily return to their screens and, kind of chat between themselves. But I would be sitting there like, oh, my goodness, I cannot do this. I'm stuck here at this desk from Monday to Friday, So I bought my property and then I thought, right, that's it. I don't know how, but I'm going to go into property.
And, you're sort of preaching to the converted. I think a lot of us, both Adelle and I, have had that experience of being in corporate and doing well, but having there's a dead bit inside that's not working. And the transition, I don't know, at first it seems quite easy, but there are also challenges around it, and to the point where I'm now actually running on a Saturday down at my offices at Dragon Co-working a group. I've just started a group up for business women who left corporate and are moving through into their business, because it is wonderful. It's a fantastically exciting and scary thing to do, but there are gaps there are gaps that are left behind that you didn't think you'd miss because you didn't really notice them. All you saw was what was wrong. But it leaves gaps and things which sort of need filling, but there isn't anybody to fill them. So I'm getting women together to actually fill their own gaps.
What a wonderful idea. I'm literally getting an ache in my neck from just nodding at how amazing that idea is. Where was this when I first started? Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
Because we make, very often I think women who are in corporate as well, who we've certainly if you reach a certain level, you've done some sort of scary things. And so you think you're actually sort of quite tough and okay and you can do this and you can do that. And so we leap. We leap and we go, I had enough of this and I'm leaving.
And then 2 months later.
And it takes guts and it's brave. But there's stuff missing. And I didn't really appreciate that there's a difference between the structure that I didn't want and the framework that I needed.
Literally, the first thing that I've missed was my routine.
Yeah. And I was rebelling against the structure that was being imposed on me. I don't want any of that. I'm doing my own thing. Well, of course I'm doing my own thing. But you need to have something around it. And I flapped around for a long, long time, not having a proper framework and not sitting down and doing things as I'd almost, I must have been taught to do, but as I knew how to do them, I'm not doing that. So, yeah, it's a brave thing, but you have a really good sort of backbone for it, don't you?
Yeah. It's something I say to my friends that the entrepreneurial muscle is something that grows over time. I wasn't this person when I started. I didn't know that I would have to transform. I didn't know I was going to be this person. It's just what has had to come along.
I think for a lot of people, it may have been for you as well. For me, it was almost like a rebellion thing. It was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't dance to somebody else's tune any longer. I've got to do my own thing. I just didn't really know what my own thing was.
But look at all of these, look at you now, the show, all of these really good workshops that are going to benefit so many people. And this is why timing is just divine timing.
It is. You can't make it go any faster, actually. You cannot make it go any faster. You just have to surrender and see what happens. That doesn't mean do nothing, but you have to sort of let it go and see what emerges. Let's focus a little bit more on property. I'll stop waffling on. It's the sort of thing that I think sometimes people think it's I think people get confused about investing in property. I think some people think it's really easy and it's much easier than it actually is. And I think other people think it's totally beyond them and it's much harder than it actually is. And I suspect there's something that's sort of in the middle, and that if you have the right knowledge, it's actually a good place to be. I've got some questions here that I think are frequently asked questions, sort of about what it is that you do, and this is what you help your clients with. So how do I get started in property? I don't know, is that something you can answer in a...
No, it's a good question. Yeah, it's definitely a frequently asked question. I would say it's always, you're starting with the end in mind. So when thinking about investing in property, why are you doing it? If it's to get kind of more money in per week, I wish. If it's to get increase your monthly cash flow, then okay, there's a strategy for that. If it's so you have a retirement pot that's not just your usual kind of state pension, then then it's another strategy.
Okay, yes, that makes sense, and I'd never actually thought of it like that with property. I just thought you sort of buy this house and then you rent it out.
You start right from the end.
Yeah, okay.
But then as you're working your way back from the last step, you then, because it's, once you know what you're trying to achieve, so say you decide, okay, do you know what? I want to increase my monthly income, but have a property that I can hand to my children. Then you're going to think, right, what's next? Okay, how much do I want to kind of roughly earn? Do I want to be super close to the property and I manage the property myself? Do I want to hand it to a letting agent? And then kind of go from there. And what happens is, as you work the steps back, you start to realise that, okay, I'm going to be, I want a property, I don't know, for example, in Colchester. And in Colchester, there's a university. So actually, my target's going to be students. Okay, well, what do students need? Well, they need a room with a desk. They want fast Wi-Fi and these things. And it's just working your way backwards. So start by thinking what you want to achieve.
So I can see the benefit of coming to somebody like yourself is actually knowing the questions to ask. Firstly, knowing the questions to ask, knowing what is possible, but also having that insight into looking into what is actually around in an area and knowing what are the key things that you need to be looking for.
And this is why speaking to someone like me or, others in the kind of property field makes a difference, because we're going to ask you the right questions that's going to get you to where you want to go.
So another popular question is, how much money do I need to get started?
It's another very good question. It depends. So there's strategies such as rent to rent or rent to serviced accommodation. So I'll just kind of explain the basic concept of that. So you rent the property from the landlord. So say the landlord wants £1,000 a month for a 4-bed house, say, on a rent-to-rent basis. You then you have a contract between you and the landlord, and then you legally agree to sublet the rooms. And say you rent each room for, say, £500 per month. You make 2,000 in, you pay the landlord his 1,000, and then you're left with 1,000. Of course, in reality, things are a little bit different. That you'll pay bills. When you get the property on, you might think about furnishing it if the landlord hasn't furnished it. But I guess I say this to say that there's entry level investment options. There's entry level. So for a rent to rent, I would say you would need between 5,000 and 7,000, and that's if you're taking the property on and you just need to kind of paint it, put in some light furnishings and maybe change like the flooring, see what the budget is saying.
So is this a little bit, and this may not mean anything to anybody, but I think it sort of does to me. So would this be a bit like if you own a house and you rent it to a local housing association who pay you an amount of money which is slightly below the maximum rental value, but they're guaranteeing you that you will have that rent. So you don't have to go out and worry whether there's a tenant in those rooms or a tenant in the house. You're getting that rent. You can sit back. You're okay as the landlord. So what you're saying is the investment part of it is you're paying me as the house owner that basic rate of rent, if you like. It's my responsibility to go out, fill it up, and it doesn't matter whether I've got people in it or not, I still have to meet that rental obligation to the landlord.
So yes and no. The property is always changing. So that was kind of more, I'm going to say the old school method. It's not, people still kind of get into these agreements now, but it's not necessarily giving the landlord less. So I know people who pay more per month, so pay above the kind of market rate, because the landlord has given the property to them in, it's just been refurbished and they've just put new furniture in. So the landlord is actually getting, X amount above the market rate. And actually what's happening with landlords is some of them aren't taking it on a monthly, so if it's a 4-bed house for 1,500, actually landlords now are saying, well, I know that you can get 2,000, so actually I want 1,800. Obviously that's just an example with a small margin, but I don't want, sometimes landlords think oh my goodness, we're just going to get kind of basic rate. It's not that at all. It's everyone's different.
I think what I'm getting from this is that there isn't a one size fits all solution. There isn't a one size fits all house, and that you actually need somebody like yourself, if you don't have those skills and knowledge of property, the market and what's going on, to actually look at everything as an individual case.
It's case by case.
Okay.
Because, if you've got more than if you've got maybe 15, 20,000, you could get a property up north, a buy-to-let, and, your rental income is going to depend on where it is. It could be 475, it could be a little bit more, So, yes, me, but if it's not a property person, definitely YouTube, like the usual channels, just to kind of educate yourself, because there's options for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's
so before you go diving in, basically, I think the key message that I'm getting out here is before you go diving in, just because you have the money to buy it and you think you know what you're doing to rent it out, for goodness sake, explore the different avenues. It's not as easy as it sounds. It may be an absolute breeze and everything's fine and hunky-dory, but also it may not be. And I think the key thing, and one of the questions that we actually have here, is how do you ensure that you get good tenants, is understanding your obligations to those tenants and what can happen if things go wrong, because just because somebody doesn't pay the rent doesn't mean that you can automatically have them out the next day after the rent has failed. So you haven't got your rental payment. That doesn't mean you can evict them the next day and they'll be out and you can put somebody in who's going to pay that rent. So if you're sort of squeaking by with a millimetre's sort of leeway on finance, and you need that rent in to pay that mortgage, you're in a losing situation, aren't you? So how and also tenants wreck the place.
This is why it's important to look at who your target is. Of course, you can't ever guarantee that this person, just because you follow the correct channels, you can't guarantee that it's going to all work out.
But there are certain things that certain things that you can do to mitigate your risk, aren't there?
Yeah.
Can you give us some of the examples as maybe some of the things you might look at?
So first of all, think about the target market. So again, like I said before, if you're aiming for students or you're aiming for working professionals, you need to think about how the property is going to suit that particular person. You want to, as much as, we're in this to, make money and think about long-term wealth, we actually want to provide safe, comfortable, warm homes for tenants. So think about what they need. And also follow the legal channels, make sure everyone's referenced, make sure tenancy agreements are watertight, they've all been signed. And I also like to meet everyone. I like to meet tenants beforehand, kind of build a bit of rapport, show that I'm not a big bad kind of agent, and it's kind of relationship building and following the correct channels, and when there are problems in the property, be quick to solve it. Tenants love that. Yeah.
Yes, because it can be tricky being a tenant sometimes, can't it? Something goes wrong and it's not being repaired, and the impact on you as a tenant. If the ceilings come down in a bedroom and you have one bedroom and you've just had a baby, this is not a good situation to be in. If the heating breaks, you need to know that something's going to be done. I mean, the same with a household with owner occupiers. You can't just get somebody in to mend the heating. You can't just pick the phone. You're going to mend my heating. They're probably going to say, well, actually, yeah, I can get there in 2 or 3 days. But you want to see something happening. You want to see some sort of action so that you know that the situation is going to be resolved at some point. So,
and this is the importance of communication. People like to be updated. Tenants want to know if this particular thing has broken, what is being done to even if it's not going to be solved right now, this second, when will it be solved, what's being done, and they like to be kept updated. So there's lots of factors to think about when thinking about property.
Yeah, and I think the message that I'm getting here is that it can be, as the property owner or as the person who's investing in the property, it can be a really, really good, safe, sound investment. However, you have to do your research and you have to go into it in depth, and you really do need to know what you're doing, and it doesn't stop the day you sign the mortgage and a tenant moves in. It's an ongoing situation. Yes, you may be able to get somebody to help you with that work like yourself, but you still need to make sure that happens. You can't just sort of close the metaphorical door and go, well, that's that.
And this is the importance of thinking what you're trying to achieve, because not everybody wants to be dealing with tenants. Some people want to flip properties. You buy it, you refurb it, you sell it on. So there's a strategy for literally everyone. So for people that want to avoid tenants, you can do flips. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there are so many different options. So listen, Melissa, tell me, how can people contact you?
Via my website. So that's mlpropertyventure.co.uk, or just drop me an email, info@mlpropertyventure.co.uk.
And we have a few quick-fire questions now, which you may not have been expecting. Okay. You see, this is why you should always listen to a radio show. Always listen to a show before you turf up. So, what's your top tip for property investment?
Start now. Don't wait to see what's going to happen with interest rates and what people are saying about a crash. There's something every year. There's COVID. There's this. There's that. So yeah, just start now.
There's always something going on. Yeah,
start now.
And what's your top tip for being in business?
It's not easy. You just got to keep going. If you've got to go down the woo-woo route, as we keep saying, whatever you need to do it. But if you have an idea and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do that, start it, because the longer you leave it, the longer you procrastinate on it, you'll never start. So literally, like my first tip, start now.
Get going, do it.
Get going.
And what do you know now that you wish you'd have known when you started out?
Am I allowed to say how difficult it's going to be?
Yeah, you can say.
Be honest.
Listen, I've asked the question, and your answer is whatever you want it to be. What do you know? What do you know now?
If I knew how difficult starting and growing a business was, you know, and that's everything. That's not just the day-to-day work of the business, but that's managing staff, employing staff, you know, rejigging your processes, making things better and stuff like that. If I knew how hard it was, do you know what? I'm glad I didn't actually. So no, I might have to change my tip.
Ah, okay. All right.
Off.
Do you? No, that's okay because you're still here.
This is exactly it. I'm still here because I burnt the bridges, I burnt the ships, so I don't see a way backwards. There's not a plan B. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I thought I'm going to continue.
What is your long-term strategy? Have you got one?
Yes, so I would love to get involved in development. So I find buildings really fascinating, and just how a whole building comes together. I recently watched Sarah Beanie had a show on Channel 4, and she was building, I think it was like her house or her mansion from scratch. So fascinating. So I would love to be a part of developments and just kind of have our own portfolio, really.
Okay, so would that be individual properties, or
Yes.
as opposed to like an estate development?
So I would love to do like a commercial to residential conversion. That blows my mind. So commercial, like, you know, a block of office buildings being converted into like a nice luxury block of flats. I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah, a bit like they've done with the power station, haven't they, in London, where they've turned it into
Yes.
that amazing shopping complex. Yeah, there is lots going on.
That sounds really exciting. I think the evolution of that, actually, of what you're saying, of watching something transform from what may well be potentially quite dull into something that is creating a living space for people. Is that where you get fired up about it? Is it the living spaces that's getting you going?
I actually love to do viewings and to see tenants happy with a property.
Okay.
Even when I'm not building it from scratch, I don't know how to build it from scratch. But when people come in and they're like, oh, you know, this is really nice, and oh, this is a perfect location, like I get all excited. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Okay.
yay! So to see the whole journey, to be a part of the planning process, to be a part of the, like, you know, this is our target client, this is our target like tenant, this is what they would need. That to do the whole process from start to finish, to you know, put together something that I know that target tenant would like. Oh,
I love that you've got that joy
Oh,
that's
my goodness,
sort of underneath of seeing those tenants in you know, perhaps the perfect place for them, or it may be the first place for them, and that you've turned that into your business, and you're now taking it on to the next stage of your business, which is going beyond buying to developing. And I'm absolutely sure you are going to do that. I'm certain you are going to do that.
Thank you so
I
much.
really am. I can see it happening. So Melissa Lewis, founder and CEO of ML Property Venture, thank you so much for such an inspiring and honest show, and I'm sure we are going to be hearing an awful lot more from you. So, and Becca, we did have Becca in the studio, but it's my fault. We've just been waffling on. Adelle, sorry, you didn't say much either, did you? We got a few bits and pieces.
No,
in.
to be fair, I was making lots and lots of notes.
Yeah.
So I love that. I just love that idea. I love it.
So thank you so much, folks. We will see you back next week, and in the meantime, have a fantastic time. Enjoy yourself, and remember to take some time out. You've earned it. Bye.
Tune in next week to the Women in Business radio show for more stories, ideas, and inspiration to help you grow your business.